I'm going to turn to our featured speakers, and I'm happy to introduce our first speaker, who is Dr. Kara Pickens. She's an ELA teacher who not only uses Edulastic for remote assessment, but she also conducts full lessons. So I'll let Kara share a little bit more about herself and dive into the presentation.
I am a high school ELA teacher, and I also teach college level courses as well. But what I'm planning to share with everyone today, I think can be used across curriculum areas and across grade levels, and even with elementary school students. I'm in the state of Indiana, and we've been doing e-learning days for snow days for quite some time now. So I kind of feel somewhat prepared for the situation that we've all found ourselves in right now. And we've also been one-to-one for a long time. I think we might be in our my 6th year of going one-to-one in the schools that I've been at. And I have learned a lot of lessons from having e-learning days, and so I'm excited to share them with you. And I've also been using Edulastic for several years, and I'm a huge fan of Edulastic. My students would probably be the first one to tell you that, but I love it. And I love all the different options it gives me as a teacher, and it allows me to use ed technology in creative ways. Here are some of the problems that I quickly discovered with e-learning days when we had them, and this was just for one day of e-learning. I'm assuming that over time, as a lot of us in districts are looking at right now, that these problems would be compounded. It's really difficult to sequence your lessons and to time your lessons. Students get really frustrated, and I'm going to share my students' biggest frustration on the next slide, but students are obviously a little anxious about completing work, and it's hard to do that without a teacher that's live with them. It's difficult for me as a teacher to track work, and I always enjoy e-learning days to watch students as they're completing it, but until it's completed, I don't know if they've started. And it's difficult to adapt something that you had for an in-class lesson to work online. Okay, so next. These are all the ways that Edulastic has really helped with that. First of all, the variety of question types on Edulastic allows me to kind of sequence a lesson and to do some interesting things, and I'll talk about that later. With my student frustrations, rather than breaking an assignment into smaller pieces, I can just give them one assignment on Edulastic, and it still has different components to it, but I think students feel a lot less anxious than looking at all these assignments all at once. I can watch students as they work live. They don't have to submit it in order for me to see it, and that's really huge. And then I can also include a lot of differentiation to a degree that sometimes I use these lessons, digital lessons, in my own classroom when the students are with me, because I can differentiate in some pretty amazing ways. Okay, next. Okay, so I just want to show kind of before and after what my e-learning digital lessons look like before I started using them for Edulastic. So if you look on the left, what I would do for students is I would prepare a hyperdoc for them that listed all the components of their lesson. And my school really has the expectation that our digital lessons are around a class period, but slightly shorter, so you give students enough time, but that they have all the components of a lesson. And then I would post all those components as individual assignments to do. So I would have an anticipatory hook, I'd have direct instruction, I'd have some practice, I'd have some assessment. And even though I would make those each really short assignments, this completely freaked my students out, because you can see in the middle image there what that would actually look like on Google Classroom, and that frightened them. They were like, Dr. Pickens has 5 assignments for me to do today. I'm not going to do that because that's awful. And they didn't even look to see that it was like a 2-minute assignment. So I decided to kind of play mind tricks on them in a little way. And I just did all those components, but in an Edulastic assignment. And so they just had one link to go to. And the feedback was overwhelming. They loved it. They loved to go to one place for all their assignments and know that they were completing a whole lesson that way. Okay, next. Okay, so this is what I do for my digital lesson plan. I create one Edulastic assignment that has all of the components of a good lesson. And I think this would work in elementary just as well as high school or even college. I start out with an anticipatory hook for students to draw in some personal connections to the material that we're about to learn. This one here was just describing something funny that happened to you. It was a lesson on irony. And then I gave a personal example. I often provide my students with modeled examples so they know what my expectations are. And this one had to do with the time that my husband's underwear was accidentally dropped into my classroom. But anyways, I just give students a chance to personally connect, and I just grade these for completion. They just did it so they get the full credit. Okay, next. I also use anticipatory hooks that are short skits. This was a BBC April Fool's video when we were evaluating online sources, Saturday Night Live skits, which I always have to be careful of because of the language, current event songs. These are just ways that students can connect to what we're learning. Okay, next. The next part of my lesson that I include in the same assignment is direct instruction for students. And I really take advantage of all of the features that Edulastic has with their question types to allow for differentiated instruction. So if you look at this particular screenshot that we have here, I had video instruction for students, and I'm using here the passage question type. And with passages, you're not actually limited to just have reading passages. You can include images and you can include videos too. So in this case, and then you can also have multiple tabs. So in this case, there's video instruction, and then I have written instruction on the second tab there. And then students fill out an exit flip about what they watched or what they were reading. And I allow students to choose which one they're going to use there. Okay, next. This is another example of direct instruction and differentiation. In this particular instruction, we were learning about author's purpose, and I actually gave them 3 different videos to choose from. One of them was easier, and then medium level, and then an advanced level, depending on what they felt like they were ready for. And then I also gave them text instruction as well. They all had the same exit flip, but that way I could kind of allow students to have a choice at what level they were learning. Okay, the next, and my kids are loud, so there you go. These are just some of my recommendations here. Is just to offer students choice. I've had really positive feedback, and I'm always surprised. Students often choose the most advanced choice. I think students want to be challenged, so give them that option. Mix up the type of instruction in different lessons so your students can be engaged. Try to use images and color in your text instruction. Edulastic gives you so many options about how you can format the text and make it look within your assignment, and it's so easy to make those changes. And I also just try to be aware of accessibility issues when using that color and making sure that I'm using dark colors. But I also tend to highlight key parts that in instructions so that students don't miss that. And also, you can create your own instruction using Google Slides and a screencast maker, then upload that into YouTube and then put that onto your Edulastic assignment. So there's just so many options there. Okay. I just included this, and I think this is going to be sent out from Edulastic. There are so many resources online with videos and also kind of direct instruction, and also primary sources, primary images if you're working with history or social studies. So I've included those. I've also been using Capwing a lot, and what I'll do is take a video that maybe another teacher has made on YouTube, but I will clip it so it's in smaller chunks. So I'll have a couple parts of direct instruction, and then I'm asking exit flips after each chunk so that students can pay attention better. And I also use Screencastify a lot to create my own screencasts. Okay, next. Okay, then I have students actually apply the direct instruction. So in this case, this was the author's purpose, and I had them starting with some videos. But that's the next component of my lesson. This one was on author's purpose, and they had a Saturday Night Live video to talk about the author's purpose being entertaining. And there's all different question types you can use for this. So I used a two-part question here. What's the author's purpose? And then they had to cite evidence from the video for that. Okay, next. This is another example of some application for students. And in this case, it was for one of my college classes. And what they were doing was actually a multi-step question in an essay form, and it was really complex. With the question, I actually added another tab to the passage-based question to provide them with a modeled example of what their answer should look like. So there's lots of different ways that you can provide students with extra support, especially if they're learning at home right now, to give them a lot of modeling and scaffolding so that they can answer the questions well. Okay, next. The last part of my lesson plan is to give students some chances to reflect on what they're learning. In this case, I connected it back to the attention grabber they had and then had them reflect on using some of the terms that we had studied in the direct instruction. And other times I might have students just tell me what they learned through this lesson. Okay, next. I also wanted to just talk about accessibility considerations here. There's a lot of options to change the font size for students with Edulastic. I also, if I have reading passages and I'm working with a reading assessment, I try to find audiobook versions of the reading passage, and you can just insert that in with the reading passage so students have that. Or you could make your own using a screen cap I've done before for students too. But just giving them as much support as they need, and Edulastic just enables you to insert all those things into the assignment. Next. Another part, we already talked about that, but you can print out the paper versions. It's so easy, and I really appreciate that feature a lot for our students. Okay, next. I also, in addition to creating full lesson plans, use Edulastic for parts of lessons, and it's not always assessments. For this particular assignment, this was an anticipatory hook for a college level rhetorical analysis essay, and so it was just that part of the lesson. So you can use this for more than just assessments. Okay, next. A couple other things that I found to be really helpful is remembering that one lesson plan doesn't need to be finished in one day. Some of the lessons that I've put together, I would actually give as a multi-day assignment for students. And our students, I know, are really stressed right now. And so it's really important for us to be giving them a manageable workload. And I also really try to personalize the material I give. I think those human connections and those social connections we have with our students right now are really important. I try to use local material, like local letters to the editor or local images in my assignments. And I'm also going to really try to make an effort to create my own screencast so students can hear a familiar voice in the classroom. Also, as we're doing e-learning, there's ways to minimize chances of cheating. You can set it up so that students don't see the answers after they've submitted, and you can also ask more open-ended questions so that students can't screenshot their work and send it to other students. Okay, next. And that's just ways to keep in touch with me. So when this is shared, please feel free. And if you want to look up my assessments, if you just search for my name in Edulastic in the library, most of my assessments are available for other teachers to use. Next. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Kara. That was a lot of great information. I really like the way that you used the passage-based questions where they can choose their own level of learning. I think that's excellent. I hadn't seen that before, and I liked that a lot. I also liked how each one of the pieces were of the overall lesson were a separate section. Yeah, just really great stuff. And the modeling that you can do using the tabs in a passage-based question. So that was very creative. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think Edulastic's awesome. So
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Great. So for the audience, if you have any questions for Kara, place them in the chat and we'll address all the questions at the end. And as you're seeing this, as you're going through, this is sort of the advanced version of Edulastic. If you have basic questions or questions about sort of the 101 of Edulastic, we have a lot of resources for you that we can share with you at the end of this seminar as well.
Oh, I also wanted to add, and I hadn't looked for a long time to see if this is the case, but when I first started using Edulastic, I'm not always tech savvy. I take a while to catch on. So Edulastic had, or still has, I hope, instructional videos on how to use each question and create it. Like all I had to do was click on a question mark and they would pop up. Is that still available?
It is still available. And
okay.
So
that was a lifesaver to me at the beginning.
No, they're fantastic. Whenever you author a question, when you click into that question type, there's a question mark and it will launch a short video. You can also get all of those videos on our Edulastic channel on YouTube.